Chapter 1. Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. March 16th. A gentleman friend and I were dining at the Ritz last evening, and he said that if I took a pencil and a paper and put down all of my thoughts, it would make a book. This almost made me smile, as what it would really make would be a whole row of encyclopedias. I seem to be thinking practically all of the time. It is my favorite recreation, and sometimes I sit for hours and do not seem to do anything else but think. So this gentleman said a girl with brains ought to do something else with them besides think. And he said he ought to know brains when he sees them, because he is in the Senate, and he spends quite a great deal of time in Washington, D.C., and when he comes into contact with brains, he always notices it. So it might have all blown over, but this morning he sent me a book. And so, when my maid brought it to me, I said to her, "Well, Lulu, here is another book, and we have not read half the ones we have got yet." But when I opened it and saw that it was all a blank, I remembered what my gentleman acquaintance said, and so then I realized that it was a diary. So here I am, writing a book instead of reading one. But now it is the 16th of March, and of course it is too late to begin with January, but it does not matter, as my gentleman friend, Mr. Eisman, was in town practically all of January and February, and when he is in town, one day seems to be practically the same as the next day. Mr. Eisman is in the wholesale button profession in Chicago, and he is the gentleman who is known practically all over Chicago as Gus Eisman, the Button King, and he is the gentleman who is interested in educating me. So, of course, he is always coming down to New York to see how my brains have improved since the last time. But when Mr. Eisman is in New York, we always seem to do the same thing, and if I wrote down one day in my diary, all I would have to do would be to put quotation marks for all the other days. We always seem to have dinner at the Colony and see a show and go to the Trocadero, and then Mr. Eisman shows me to my apartment. So, of course, when a gentleman is interested in educating a girl, he likes to stay and talk about the topics of the day until quite late, so I am quite fatigued the next day, and I do not really get up until it is time to dress for dinner at the Colony. It would be strange if I turn out to be an authoress. At my home near Little Rock, Arkansas, my family all wanted me to do something about my music, because all my friends said I had talent, and they all kept after me about practicing. But some way, I never seemed to care so much about practicing. I simply could not sit for hours and hours at a time practicing just for the sake of a career. So one day I got quite temperamental and threw the old mandolin clear across the room, and I have really never touched it since. But writing is different because you do not have to learn or practice, and it is more temperamental because practicing seems to take all the temperament out of me. So now I really almost have to smile, because I have just noticed that I have written clear across 2 pages onto March 18th. So this will do for today and tomorrow. And it just shows how temperamental I am when I get started. March 19th. Well, last evening Dorothy called up, and Dorothy said she has met a gentleman who gave himself an introduction to her in the lobby of the Ritz. So then they went to luncheon and tea and dinner, and then they went to a show, and then they went to the Trocadero. So Dorothy said his name was Lord Cooksley, but what she really calls him is Cuckoo. So Dorothy said, Why don't you and I and Cuckoo go to the Follies tonight and bring Gus along if he is in town?" So then Dorothy and I had quite a little quarrel, because every time that Dorothy mentions the subject of Mr. Eisman, she calls Mr. Eisman by his first name, and she does not seem to realize that when a gentleman who is as important as Mr. Eisman spends quite a lot of money educating a girl, it really does not show reverence to call a gentleman by his first name. I mean, I never even think of calling Mr. Eisman by his first name, but if I want to call him anything at all, I call him Daddy, and I do not even call him Daddy if a place seems to be public. So I told Dorothy that Mr. Eisman would not be in town until day after tomorrow. So then Dorothy and Cuckoo came up, and we went to the Follies. So this morning, Cuckoo called up, and he wanted me to luncheon at the Ritz. I mean, these foreigners really have quite a nerve. Just because Cuckoo is an Englishman and a lord, he thinks a girl can waste hours on him just for a luncheon at the Ritz, when all he does is talk about some exposition he went on to a place called Tibet, and after talking for hours, I found out that all they were was a lot of Chinamen. So I will be quite glad to see Mr. Eisman when he gets in, because he always has something quite interesting to talk about. As for instance, the last time he was here, he presented me with quite a beautiful emerald bracelet. So next week is my birthday, and he always has some delightful surprise on holidays. I did intend to luncheon at the Ritz with Dorothy today, and of course Cuckoo had to spoil it, as I told him that I could not luncheon with him today because my brother was in town on business and had the mumps, so I really could not leave him alone. Because of course, if I went to the Ritz now, I would bump into Cuckoo. But I sometimes almost have to smile at my own imagination, because of course, I have not got any brother, and I have not even thought of the mumps for years. I mean, it is no wonder that I can write. So the reason I thought I would take luncheon at the Ritz was because Mr. Chaplin is at the Ritz, and I always like to renew old acquaintances, because I met Mr. Chaplin once when we were both working on the same lot in Hollywood, and I am sure he would remember me. Gentlemen always seem to remember blondes. I mean, the only career I would like to be besides an authoress is a cinema star, and I was doing quite well in the cinema when Mr. Eisman made me give it all up. Because, of course, when a gentleman takes a friendly interest in educating a girl, as Mr. Eisman does, you like to show that you appreciate it, and he is against a girl being in the cinema because his mother is Orthodox. March 20th. Mr. Eisman gets in tomorrow to be here in time for my birthday, so I thought it would really be delightful to have at least one good time before Mr. Eisman got in. So last evening I had some literary gentlemen in to spend the evening, because Mr. Eisman always likes me to have literary people in and out of the apartment. I mean, he is quite anxious for a girl to improve her mind, and his greatest interest in me is because I always seem to want to improve my mind and not waste any time. And Mr. Eisman likes me to have what the French people call a salo, which means that people all get together in the evening and improve their minds. So I invited all of the brainy gentlemen I could think up. So I thought up a gentleman who is the professor of all the economics up at Columbia College, and the editor who is the famous editor of the New York Transcript, and another gentleman who is the famous playwright who writes very, very famous plays that are all about life. I mean, anybody would recognize his name, but it always seems to slip my memory, because all of we real friends of his only call him Sam. So Sam asked if he could bring a gentleman who writes novels from England. So I said yes, so he brought him. And then we all got together, and I called up Gloria and Dorothy, and the gentlemen brought their own liquor. So of course the place was a wreck this morning, and Lulu and I worked like proverbial dogs to get it cleaned up. But heaven knows how long it will take to get the chandelier fixed. March 22nd. Well, my birthday has come and gone, but it was really quite depressing. I mean, it seems to me a gentleman who has a friendly interest in educating a girl like Gus Eisman would want her to have the biggest square-cut diamond in New York. I mean, I must say, I was quite disappointed when he came to the apartment with a little thing you could hardly see. So I told him I thought it was quite cute, but I had quite a headache, and I had better stay in a dark room all day, and I told him I would see him the next day, perhaps. Because even Lulu thought it was quite small, and she said if she was I, she really would do something definite, and she said she always believed in the old adage, leave them while you're good-looking. But he came in at dinner time with really a very, very beautiful bracelet of square-cut diamonds, so I was quite cheered up. So then we had dinner at the Colony, and we went to a show and supper at the Trocadero, as usual whenever he is in town. But I will give him credit that he realized how small it was. I mean, he kept talking about how bad business was, and the button profession was full of Bolsheviks, who made nothing but trouble. Because Mr. Eisman feels that the country is really on the verge of the Bolsheviks, and I become quite worried. I mean, if the Bolsheviks do get in, there is only one gentleman who could handle them, and that is Mr. D.W. Griffith. Because I will never forget when Mr. Griffith was directing Intolerance. I mean, it was my last cinema just before Mr. Eisman made me give up my career, and I was playing one of the girls that fainted at the battle when all of the gentlemen fell off the tower. And when I saw how Mr. Griffith handled all of those mobs in Intolerance, I realized that he could do anything. And I really think that the government of America ought to tell Mr. Griffith to get all ready if the Bolsheviks start to do it. Well, I forgot to mention that the English gentleman who writes novels seems to have taken quite an interest in me as soon as he found out that I was literary. I mean, he has called up every day, and I went to tea twice with him. So he has sent me a whole complete set of books for my birthday by a gentleman called Mr. Conrad. They all seem to be about ocean travel, although I have not had time to more than glance through them. I have always liked novels about ocean travel, ever since I posed for Mr. Christie for the front cover of a novel about ocean travel by McGrath, because I always say that a girl never really looks as well as she does on board a steamship or even a yacht. So the English gentleman's name is Mr. Gerald Lamson, as those who have read his novels would know. And he also sent me some of his own novels, as they seem to be about middle-aged English gentlemen who live in the country over in London and seem to ride bicycles, which seems quite different from America, except at Palm Beach. So I told Mr. Lamson how I write down all of my thoughts, and he said he knew I had something to me from the first minute he saw me, and when we become better acquainted, I am going to let him read my diary. I mean, I even told Mr. Eisman about him, and he is quite pleased, because of course Mr. Lamson is quite famous, and it seems Mr. Eisman has read all of his novels going to and fro on the trains, And Mr. Eisman is always anxious to meet famous people and take them to the Ritz to dinner on Saturday night. But of course, I did not tell Mr. Eisman that I am really getting quite a little crush on Mr. Lamson, which I really believe I am. But Mr. Eisman thinks my interest in him is more literary. March 30th. At last Mr. Eisman has left on the 20th century, and I must say I am quite fatigued, and a little rest will be quite welcome. I mean, I do not mind staying out late every night if I dance, but Mr. Eisman is really not such a good dancer, so most of the time we just sit and drink some champagne or have a bite to eat, and of course I do not dance with anyone else when I am out with Mr. Eisman. But Mr. Eisman and Jerry, as Mr. Lamson wants me to call him, became quite good friends, and we had several evenings, all three together. So now that Mr. Eisman is out of town at last, Jerry and I are going out together this evening, and Jerry said not to dress up, because Jerry seems to like me more for my soul. So I really had to tell Jerry that if all the gentlemen were like he seems to be, Madame Frances's whole dressmaking establishment would have to go out of business. But Jerry does not like a girl to be nothing else but a doll, but he likes her to bring in her husband's slippers every evening and make him forget what he has gone through. But before Mr. Eisman went to Chicago, he told me that he is going to Paris this summer on professional business, and I think he intends to present me with a trip to Paris, as he says there is nothing so educational as traveling. I mean, it did worlds of good to Dorothy when she went abroad last spring, and I never get tired of hearing her telling how the merry-go-rounds in Paris have pigs instead of horses. But I really do not know whether to be thrilled or not, because of course, if I go to Paris, I will have to leave Jerry, and both Jerry and I have made up our minds not to be separated from one another from now on. March 31st. Last night Jerry and I had dinner at quite a quaint place where we had roast beef and baked potato. I mean, he always wants me to have food, which is what he calls nourishing, which most gentlemen never seem to think about. So then we took a hansom cab and drove for hours around the park, because Jerry said the air would be good for me. It is really very sweet to have someone think of all those things that gentlemen hardly ever seem to think about. So then we talked quite a lot. I mean, Jerry knows how to draw a girl out, and I told him things that I really would not even put in my diary. So when he heard all about my life, he became quite depressed, and we both had tears in our eyes, because he said he never dreamed a girl could go through so much as I and come out so sweet and not made bitter by it all. I mean, Jerry thinks that most gentlemen are brutes and hardly ever think about a girl's soul. So it seems that Jerry has quite a lot of trouble himself, and he cannot even get married on account of his wife. He and she have never been in love with each other, but she was a suffragette and asked him to marry her, so what could he do? So we rode all around the park until quite late, talking and philosophizing quite a lot, and I finally told him that I thought, after all, that bird life was the highest form of civilization. So Jerry calls me his little thinker, and I really would not be surprised if all of my thoughts will give him quite a few ideas for his novels, because Jerry says he has never seen a girl of my personal appearance with so many brains, and he had almost given up looking for his ideal when our paths seemed to cross each other, and I told him I really thought a thing like that was nearly always the result of fate. So Jerry says that I remind him quite a lot of Helen of Troy, who was of Greek extraction. but the only Greek I know is a Greek gentleman by the name of Mr. Georgopoulos, who is really quite wealthy, and he is what Dorothy and I call a shopper, because you can always call him up at any hour and ask him to go shopping, and he is always quite delighted, which very few gentlemen seem to be. And he never seems to care how much anything costs. I mean, Mr. Georgopoulos is also quite cultured, as I know quite a few gentlemen who can speak to a waiter in French, but Mr. Georgopoulos can also speak to a waiter in Greek, which very few gentlemen seem to be able to do. April 1st. I am taking special pains with my diary from now on, as I am really writing it for Jerry. I mean, he and I are going to read it together some evening in front of the fireplace. But Jerry leaves this evening for Boston, as he has to lecture about all of his works at Boston, but he will rush right back as soon as possible. So I'm going to spend all of my time improving myself while he is gone. And this afternoon, we are both going to a museum on Fifth Avenue because Jerry wants to show me a very, very beautiful cup made by an antique jeweler called Mr. Cellini. And he wants me to read Mr. Cellini's life, which is a very, very fine book and not dull while he is in Boston. So the famous playwright friend of mine, who is called Sam, called up this morning, and he wanted me to go to a literary party tonight that he and some other literary gentlemen are giving to Florence Mills in Harlem, but Jerry does not want me to go with Sam, as Sam always insists on telling risque stories. But personally, I am quite broad-minded, and I always say that I do not mind a risque story as long as it is really funny. I mean, I have a great sense of humor. But Jerry says Sam does not always select and choose his stories, and he just as soon as I did not go out with him. So I'm going to stay home and read the book by Mr. Cellini instead. Because after all, the only thing I am really interested in is improving my mind. So I'm going to do nothing else but improve my mind while Jerry is in Boston. I mean, I just received a cable from Willie Gwynn, who arrives from Europe tomorrow, but I am not even going to bother to see him. He is a sweet boy, but he never gets anywhere, and I am not going to waste my time on such as him after meeting a gentleman like Jerry. April 2nd. I seem to be quite depressed this morning, as I always am when there's nothing to put my mind to, because I decided not to read the book by Mr. Cellini. I mean, it was quite amusing in spots because it was really quite risque, but the spots were not so close together, and I never seemed to like to always be hunting clear through a book for the spots I am looking for, especially when there are really not so many spots that seem to be so amusing after all. So I did not waste my time on it, but this morning I told Lulu to let all of the housework go and spend the day reading a book entitled Lord Jim, and then tell me all about it, so that I would improve my mind while Jerry is away. But when I got her the book, I nearly made a mistake and gave her a book by the title of The Nigger of Narcissus, which really would have hurt her feelings. I mean, I do not know why authors cannot say Negro instead of nigger, as they have their feelings just the same as we have. Well, I just got a telegram from Jerry that he will not be back until tomorrow, and also some orchids from Willie Gwynn, so I may as well go to the theater with Willie tonight to keep from getting depressed, as he really is a sweet boy after all. I mean, he never really does anything obnoxious, and it is quite depressing to stay at home and do nothing but read, unless you really have a book that is worth bothering about. April 3rd. I was really so depressed this morning that I was even glad to get a letter from Mr. Eisman. Because last night, Willie Gwynn came to take me to the Follies, but he was so intoxicated that I had to telephone his club to send around a taxi to take him home. So that left me alone with Lulu at 9 o'clock with nothing to do. So I put in a telephone call for Boston to talk to Jerry, but it never went through. So Lulu tried to teach me how to play mahjong, but I really could not keep my mind on it because I was so depressed. So today I think I had better go over to Madame Francis's and order some new evening gowns to cheer me up. Well, Lulu just brought me a telegram from Jerry that he will be in this afternoon, but I must not meet him at the station on account of all the reporters who always meet him at the station, wherever he comes from. But he says he will come right up to see me as he has something to talk about. April 4th. What an evening we had last evening. I mean, it seems that Jerry is madly in love with me, because all of the time he was in Boston lecturing to the women's clubs, he said, as he looked over the faces of all those club women in Boston, he never realized I was so beautiful. And he said that there was only one in the world, and that was me. But it seems that Jerry thinks that Mr. Eisman is terrible and that no good can come of our friendship. I mean, I was quite surprised, as they both seemed to get along quite well together. But it seems that Jerry never wants me to see Mr. Eisman again, and he wants me to give up everything and study French, and he will get a divorce, and we will be married. Because Jerry does not seem to like the kind of life all of us lead in New York, and he wants me to go home to Papa in Arkansas, and he will send me books to read so that I will not get lonesome there. And he gave me his uncle's Masonic ring, which came down from the time of Solomon, and which he never even lets his wife wear, for our engagement ring. And this afternoon, a lady friend of his is going to bring me a new system she thought up of how to learn French. But some way, I still seem to be depressed. I mean, I could not sleep all night thinking of the terrible things Jerry said about New York and about Mr. Eisman. Of course, I can understand Jerry being jealous of any gentleman friend of mine, and of course I never really thought that Mr. Eisman was Rudolph Valentino, but Jerry said it made him cringe to think of a sweet girl like I having a friendship with Mr. Eisman. So it really made me feel quite depressed. I mean, Jerry likes to talk quite a lot, and I always think a lot of talking is depressing, and worries your brains with things you never even think of when you are busy. But so long as Jerry does not mind me going out with other gentlemen when they have something to give you mentally, I am going to luncheon with Eddie Goldmark of the Goldmark films, who is always wanting me to sign a contract to go into the cinema. Because Mr. Goldmark is madly in love with Dorothy, and Dorothy is always wanting me to go back to the cinema, because Dorothy says that she will go if I will go. April 6th. Well, I finally wrote Mr. Eisman that I was going to get married, and it seems that he is coming on at once, as he would probably like to give me his advice. Getting married is really quite serious, and Jerry talks to me for hours and hours about it. I mean, he never seems to get tired of talking, and he does not seem to even want to go to shows, or dance, or do anything else but talk. And if I don't really have something definite to put my mind on soon, I will scream. April 7th. Well, Mr. Eisman arrived this morning, and he and I had quite a long talk, and after all, I think he is right. Because here is the first real opportunity I have ever really had. I mean to go to Paris and broaden out and improve my writing. And why should I give it up to marry an author where he is the whole thing and all I would be the wife of Gerald Lamson. And on top of that, I would have to be dragged into the scandal of a divorce court and get my name smirched. So Mr. Eisman said that opportunities come too seldom in a girl's life for me to give up the first one I have really ever had. So I am sailing for France and London on Tuesday and taking Dorothy with me, and Mr. Eisman says that he will see us there later. So Dorothy knows all of the ropes, and she can get along in Paris just as though she knew French. And besides, she knows a French gentleman who was born and raised there, who speaks it like a native and knows Paris like a book. And Dorothy says that when we get to London, nearly everybody speaks English anyway. So it is quite lucky that Mr. Lamson is out lecturing in Cincinnati, and he will not be back until Wednesday, and I can send him a letter and tell him that I have to go to Europe now, but I will see him later, perhaps. So anyway, I will be spared listening to any more of his depressing conversation. So Mr. Eisman gave me quite a nice string of pearls, and he gave Dorothy a diamond pin, and we all went to the Colony for dinner, and we all went to a show and supper at the Trocadero, and we all spent quite a pleasant evening. Chapter 2. Fate Keeps on Happening. April 11th. Well, Dorothy and I are really on the ship sailing to Europe, as anyone could tell by looking at the ocean. I always love the ocean. I always love a ship, and I really love the Majestic, because you would not know it was a ship, because it was just like being at the Ritz. And the steward says the ocean is not so obnoxious this month as it generally is. So Mr. Eisman is going to meet us next month in Paris, because he has to be there on business. He always says that there is really no place to see the latest styles in buttons like Paris. So Dorothy is out taking a walk up and down the deck with a gentleman she met on the steps. But I am not going to waste my time going around with gentlemen, because if I did nothing but go around, I would not finish my diary or read good books, which I am always reading to improve my mind. But Dorothy really does not care about her mind, and I always scold her because she does nothing but waste her time by going around with gentlemen who do not have anything, when Eddie Goldmark of the Goldmark films is really quite wealthy and can make a girl delightful presents. But she does nothing but waste her time, and yesterday, which was really the day before we sailed, she would not go to luncheon with Mr. Goldmark, but she went to luncheon to meet a gentleman called Mr. Mencken from Baltimore, who really only prints a green magazine which has not even got any pictures in it. But Mr. Eisman is always saying that every girl does not want to get ahead and get educated like me. So Mr. Eisman and Lulu come down to the boat to see me off, and Lulu cried quite a lot. I really believe she could not care any more for me if she was light and not colored. Lulu has had a very sad life, because when she was quite young, a Pullman porter fell madly in love with her. So she believed him, and he lured her away from her home to Ashtabula and deceived her there. So she finally found out that she had been deceived, and she really was broken-hearted. And when she tried to go back home, she found out that it was too late, because her best girlfriend, who she had always trusted, had stolen her husband, and he would not take Lulu back. So I have always said to her she could always work for me, and she is going to take care of the apartment until I get back, because I would not sublet the apartment, because Dorothy sublet her apartment when she went to Europe last year, and the gentleman who sublet the apartment allowed girls to pay calls on him who were not nice. Mr. Eisman has literally filled our room with flowers, and the steward has had quite a hard time to find enough vases to put them into. The steward said he knew as soon as he saw Dorothy and I that he would have quite a heavy run on vases. And of course, Mr. Eisman has sent quite a lot of good books, as he always does, because he always knows that good books are always welcome. So he has sent me quite a large book of etiquette, as he says there is quite a lot of etiquette in England and London, and it would be a good thing for a girl to learn. So I'm going to take it on the deck after luncheon and read it, because I would often like to know what a girl ought to do when a gentleman she has just met says something to her in a taxi. Of course, I always become quite vexed, but I always believe in giving a gentleman another chance. So now the steward tells me it is luncheon time, so I will go upstairs as the gentleman Dorothy met on the steps has invited us to luncheon in the Ritz, which is a special dining room on the ship where you can spend quite a lot of money because they really give away the food in the other dining room. April 12th. I am going to stay in bed this morning, as I am quite upset, as I saw a gentleman who quite upset me. I am not really sure it was the gentleman, as I saw him at quite a distance in the bar, but if it really is the gentleman, it shows that when a girl has a lot of fate in her life, it is sure to keep on happening. So when I thought I saw this gentleman, I was with Dorothy and Major Falcon, who is the gentleman Dorothy met on the steps, and Major Falcon noticed that I became upset, so he wanted me to tell him what was the matter, but it was really so terrible that I would not want to tell anyone. So I said good night to Major Falcon, and as I left him with Dorothy, I went down to our room and did nothing but cry and send the steward for some champagne to cheer me up. Champagne always makes me feel philosophical, because it makes me realize that when a girl's life is as full of fate as mine seems to be, there is nothing else to do about it. So this morning, the steward brought me my coffee and quite a large pitcher of ice water, so I will stay in bed and not have any more champagne until luncheon time. Dorothy never has any fate in her life, and she does nothing but waste her time, and I really wonder if I did right to bring her with me and not Lulu. She really gives gentlemen a bad impression, as she talks quite a lot of slang, because when I went up yesterday to meet she and Major Falcon for luncheon, I overheard her say to Major Falcon that she really liked to become intoxicated once in a dirty while. Only she did not say intoxicated, but she really said a slang word that means intoxicated, and I am always having to tell her that dirty is a slang word, and she really should not say dirty. Major Falcon is really quite a delightful gentleman for an Englishman. He really spends quite a lot of money, and we had quite a delightful luncheon and dinner in the Ritz until I thought I saw the gentleman who upset me, and I am so upset. I think I will get dressed and go up on the deck and see if it really is the one I think it is. There is nothing else for me to do, as I have finished writing in my diary for today, and I have decided not to read the book of etiquette as I glanced through it, and it does not seem to have anything in it that I would care to know, because it wastes quite a lot of time telling you what to call a lord, and all the lords I have met have told me what to call them, and it is generally some quite cute name like Cuckoo, whose real name is really Lord Cooksley. So I will not waste my time on such a book. But I wish I did not feel so upset about the gentleman I think I saw. April 13th. It really is the gentleman I thought I saw. When I found out it was the gentleman, my heart really stopped, because it all brought back things that anybody does not like to remember, no matter who they are. So yesterday, when I went up on the deck to see if I could see the gentleman and see if it really was him, I met quite a delightful gentleman whom I met once at a party called Mr. Ginsburg. Only his name is not Mr. Ginsburg anymore because a gentleman in London called Mr. Battenberg, who is some relation to some king, changed his name to Mr. Mountbatten, which Mr. Ginsburg says really means the same thing after all. So Mr. Ginsburg changed his name to Mr. Mountgins, which he really thinks is more aristocratic. So we walked around the deck and we met the gentleman face to face, and I really saw it was him, and he really saw it was me. I mean, his face became so red, it was almost a picture. So I was so upset, I said goodbye to Mr. Mountgins, and I started to rush right down to my room and cry. But when I was going down the steps, I bumped right into Major Falcon, who noticed that I was upset. So Major Falcon made me go to the Ritz and have some champagne and tell him all about it. So then I told Major Falcon about the time in Arkansas when Papa sent me to Little Rock to study how to become a stenographer. I mean, Papa and I had quite a little quarrel because Papa did not like a gentleman who used to pay calls on me in the park, and Papa thought it would do me good to get away for a while. So I was in the business college in Little Rock for about a week when a gentleman called Mr. Jennings paid a call on the business college because he wanted to have a new stenographer. So he looked over all we college girls, and he picked me out. So he told our teacher that he would help me finish my course in his office because he was only a lawyer and I really did not have to know so much. So Mr. Jennings helped me quite a lot, and I stayed in his office about a year when I found out that he was not the kind of a gentleman that a young girl is safe with. I mean, one evening, when I went to pay a call on him at his apartment, I found a girl there who really was famous all over Little Rock for not being nice. So when I found out that girls like that paid calls on Mr. Jennings, I had quite a bad case of hysterics, and my mind was really a blank, and when I came out of it, it seems that I had a revolver in my hand, and it seems that the revolver had shot Mr. Jennings. So this gentleman on the boat was really the district attorney who was at the trial, and he really was quite harsh at the trial, and he called me names that I would not even put in my diary. Because everyone at the trial, except the district attorney, was really lovely to me, and all the gentlemen in the jury all cried when my lawyer pointed at me and told them that they, practically all, had had either a mother or a sister. So the jury was only out 3 minutes, and then they came back and acquitted me, and they were all so lovely that I really had to kiss all of them, and when I kissed the judge, he had tears in his eyes, and he took me right home to his sister. I mean, it was when Mr. Jennings became shot that I got the idea to go into the cinema, so Judge Hibbard got me a ticket to Hollywood. So it was Judge Hibbard who really gave me my name, because he did not like the name I had, because he said a girl ought to have a name that ought to express her personality. So he said my name ought to be Lorelei, which is the name of a girl who became famous for sitting on a rock in Germany. So I was in Hollywood in the cinema when I met Mr. Eisman, and he said that a girl with my brains ought not to be in the cinema, but she ought to be educated. So he took me out of the cinema so he could educate me. So Major Falcon was really quite interested in everything I talked about, because he said it was quite a coincidence because this district attorney, who is called Mr. Bartlett, is now working for the government of America, and he is on his way to a place called Vienna on some business for Uncle Sam that is quite a great secret, and Mr. Falcon would like very much to know what the secret is, because the government in London sent him to America especially to find out what it was. Only, of course, Mr. Bartlett does not know who Major Falcon is, because it is such a great secret, but Major Falcon can tell me because he knows who he can trust. So Major Falcon says he thinks a girl like I ought to forgive and forget what Mr. Bartlett called me, and he wants to bring us together. And he says he thinks Mr. Bartlett would talk to me quite a lot when he really gets to know me, and I forgive him for that time in Little Rock. Because it would be quite romantic for Mr. Bartlett and I to become friendly, and gentlemen who work for Uncle Sam generally like to become romantic with girls. So he is going to bring us together on the deck after dinner tonight, and I am going to forgive him and talk with him quite a lot, because why should a girl hold a grudge against a gentleman who had to do it? So Major Falcon brought me quite a large bottle of perfume, and quite a cute imitation of quite a large-sized dog in a little shop which is on board the boat. I mean, Major Falcon really knows how to cheer a girl up quite a lot, and so tonight I'm going to make it all up with Mr. Bartlett. April 14th. Well, Mr. Bartlett and I made it all up last night, and we are going to be the best of friends and talk quite a lot. So when I went down to my room quite late, Major Falcon came down to see if I and Mr. Bartlett were really going to be friends, because he said a girl with brains like I ought to have lots to talk about with a gentleman with brains like Mr. Bartlett, who knows all of Uncle Sam's secrets. So I told Major Falcon how Mr. Bartlett thinks that he and I seem to be like a play, because all the time he was calling me all those names in Little Rock, he really thought I was. So when he found out that I turned out not to be, he said he always thought that I only used my brains against gentlemen and really had quite a cold heart. But now he thinks I ought to write a play about how he called me all those names in Little Rock, and then, after 7 years, we became friendly. So I told Major Falcon that I told Mr. Bartlett I would like to write the play, but I really did not have time, as it takes quite a lot of time to write my diary and read good books. So Mr. Bartlett did not know that I read books, which is quite a coincidence, because he reads them too. So he is going to bring me a book of philosophy this afternoon called Smile, 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 which all the brainy senators in Washington are reading, which cheers you up quite a lot. So I told Major Falcon that having a friendship with Mr. Bartlett was really quite enervating, because Mr. Bartlett does not drink anything, and the less anybody says about his dancing, the better. But he did ask me to dine at his table, which is not in the Ritz, and I told him I could not, but Major Falcon told me I ought to. But I told Major Falcon that there was a limit to almost everything. So I am going to stay in my room until luncheon, and I am going to luncheon in the Ritz with Mr. Mountgins, who really knows how to treat a girl. Dorothy is up on the deck wasting quite a lot of time with the gentleman who is only a tennis champion. So I am going to ring for the steward and have some champagne, which is quite good for a person on a boat. The steward is really quite a nice boy, and he has had quite a sad life, and he likes to tell me all about himself. I mean, it seems that he was arrested in Flatbush because he promised a gentleman that he would bring him some very, very good scotch, and they mistook him for a bootlegger. So it seems they put him in prison, and they put him in a cell with 2 other gentlemen who were very, very famous burglars. I mean, they really had their pictures in all the newspapers, and everybody was talking about them. So my steward, whose real name is Fred, was very, very proud to be in the same cell with such famous burglars. So when they asked him what he was in for, he did not like to tell them that he was only a bootlegger, so he told them that he set fire to a house and burned up quite a large family in Oklahoma. So everything would have gone all right, except that the police had put a dictaphone in the cell and used it all against him, and he could not get out until they had investigated all the fires in Oklahoma. So, I always think that it is much more educational to talk to a boy like Fred, who has been through a lot and really suffered, than it is to talk to a gentleman like Mr. Bartlett. But I will have to talk to Mr. Bartlett all afternoon, as Major Falcon has made an appointment for me to spend the whole afternoon with him. April 15th. Last night there was quite a masquerade ball on the ship, which was really all for the sake of charity, because most of the sailors seem to have orphans which they get from going on the ocean when the sea is very rough. So they took up quite a collection, and Mr. Bartlett made quite a long speech in favor of orphans, especially when their parents are sailors. Mr. Bartlett really likes to make speeches quite a lot. I mean, he even likes to make speeches when he is all alone with a girl when they are walking up and down a deck. But the masquerade ball was quite cute, and one gentleman really looked almost like an imitation of Mr. Chaplin. So Dorothy and I really did not want to go to the ball, but Mr. Bartlett bought us 2 scarves at the little store, which is on the ship, so we tied them around our hips, and everyone said we made quite a cute Carmen. So Mr. Bartlett and Major Falcon and the tennis champion were the judges. So Dorothy and I won the prizes. I mean, I really hope I do not get any more large-size imitations of a dog, as I have 3 now, and I do not see why the captain does not ask Mr. Cartier to have a jewelry store on the ship, as it is really not much fun to go shopping on a ship with gentlemen and buy nothing but imitations of dogs. So, after we won the prizes, I had an engagement to go up on the top of the deck with Mr. Bartlett, as it seems he likes to look at the moonlight quite a lot. So I told him to go up and wait for me, and I would be up later, as I promised to dance to Mr. Mountgins. So he asked me how long I would be dancing till, but I told him to wait up there, and he would find out. So Mr. Mountgins and I had quite a delightful dance and champagne until Major Falcon found us, because he was looking for me, and he said I really should not keep Mr. Bartlett waiting. So I went up on the deck, and Mr. Bartlett was up there waiting for me, and it seems that he really is madly in love with me, because he did not sleep a wink since we became friendly. Because he never thought that I really had brains, but now that he knows it, it seems that he has been looking for a girl like me for years, and he said that really the place for me when he got back home was Washington, D.C., where he lives. So I told him I thought a thing like that was nearly always the result of fate. So he wanted me to get off the ship tomorrow at France and take the same trip that he was taking to Vienna, as it seems that Vienna is in France, and if you go to England, you go too far. But I told him that I could not, because I thought if he was really madly in love with me, he would take a trip to London instead. But he told me that he had serious business in Vienna that was a very, very great secret. But I told him I did not believe it was business, but that it really was some girl, because what business could be so important? So he said it was business for the United States government at Washington, and he could not tell anybody what it was. So then we looked at the moonlight quite a lot. So I told him I would go to Vienna if I really knew it was business and not some girl, because I could not see how business could be so important. So then he told me all about it. So it seems that Uncle Sam wants some new aeroplanes that everybody else seems to want, especially England. And Uncle Sam has quite a clever way to get them, which is too long to put in my diary. So we sat up and saw the sunrise, and I became quite stiff and told him I would have to go down to my room because, after all, the ship lands at France today. And I said if I got off the boat at France to go to Vienna with him, I would have to pack up. So I went down to my room and went to bed. So then Dorothy came in, and she was up on deck with the tennis champion, but she did not notice the sunrise, as she really does not love nature, but always wastes her time and ruins her clothes, even though I always tell her not to drink champagne out of a bottle on the deck of a ship, as it lurches quite a lot. So I am going to have luncheon in my room, and I will send a note to Mr. Bartlett to tell him I will not be able to get off the boat at France to go to Vienna with him, as I have quite a headache. But I will see him sometime, somewhere else. So Major Falcon is going to come down at 12, and I have got to thinking over what Mr. Bartlett called me at Little Rock, and I am quite upset. I mean, a gentleman never pays for those things, but a girl always pays. So I think I will tell Major Falcon all about the aeroplane business, as he really wants to know. And after all, I do not think Mr. Bartlett is a gentleman to call me all those names in Little Rock, even if it was 7 years ago. I mean, Major Falcon is always a gentleman, and he really wants to do quite a lot for us in London, because he knows the Prince of Wales, and he thinks that Dorothy and I would like the Prince of Wales once we had really got to meet him. So I'm going to stay in my room until Mr. Bartlett gets off the ship at France, because I really do not seem to care if I ever see Mr. Bartlett again. So tomorrow we will be at England bright and early, and I really feel quite thrilled, because Mr. Eisman sent me a cable this morning, as he does every morning, and he says to take advantage of everybody we meet, as traveling is the highest form of education. I mean, Mr. Eisman is always right, and Major Falcon knows all the sights in London, including the Prince of Wales, so it really looks like Dorothy and I would have quite a delightful time in London. Chapter 3. London is really nothing. April 17th. Well, Dorothy and I are really at London. I mean, we got to London on the train yesterday, as the boat does not come clear up to London, but it stops on the beach, and you have to take a train. I mean, everything is much better in New York, because the boat comes right up to New York, and I am really beginning to think that London is not so educational after all. But I did not tell Mr. Eisman when I cabled him last night, because Mr. Eisman really sent me to London to get educated, and I would hate to tell him that London is a failure, because we know more in New York. So Dorothy and I came to the Ritz, and it is delightfully full of Americans. I mean, you would really think it was New York, because I always think that the most delightful thing about traveling is to always be running into Americans, and to always feel at home. So yesterday Dorothy and I went down to luncheon at the Ritz, and we saw a quite cute little blonde girl at the next table, and I nudged Dorothy under the table, because I do not think it is nice to nudge a person on top of the table, as I'm trying to teach good manners to Dorothy. So I said, "That is quite a cute little girl, so she must be an American girl." And sure enough, she called the head waiter with quite an American accent, and she was quite angry, and she said to him, "I have been coming to this hotel for 35 years, and this is the first time I have been kept waiting." So I recognized her voice, because it was really Fanny Ward. So we asked her to come over to our table, and we were all three delighted to see each other, because I and Fanny have known each other for about 5 years. But I really feel as if I knew her better, because Mama knew her 45 years ago, when she and Mama used to go to school together, and Mama used to always follow all her weddings in the newspapers. So now Fanny lives in London, and is famous for being one of the cutest girls in London. I mean, Fanny is almost historical, because when a girl is cute for 50 years, it really begins to get historical. So if Mama did not die of hardening of the arteries, she and Fanny and I could have quite a delightful time in London, as Fanny loves to shop. So we went shopping for hats, and instead of going to the regular shop, we went to the children's department, and Fanny and I bought some quite cute hats, as children hats only cost half as much, and Fanny does it all the time. I mean, Fanny really loves hats, and she buys some in the children's department every week, so she really saves quite a lot of money. So we came back to the Ritz to meet Major Falcon, because Major Falcon invited us to go to tea with him at a girl's house called Lady Shelton. So Major Falcon invited Fanny to go with us too. But she was sorry because she had to go to her music lesson. So at Lady Shelton's house, we met quite a few people who seemed to be English. I mean, some of the girls in London seemed to be ladies, which seems to be the opposite of a lord. And some who are not ladies are honorable. But quite a few are not ladies or honorable either, but are just like us. So all you have to call them is Miss. So Lady Shelton was really delighted to have we Americans come to her house. I mean, she took Dorothy and I into the back parlor and tried to sell us some shell flowers she seems to make out of seashells for 25 pounds. So we asked her how much it was in money, and it seems it is $125. I mean, I am really going to have a quite hard time in London with Dorothy, because she really should not say to an English lady what she said. I mean, she should not say to an English lady that in America we use shells the same way, only we put a dry pea under one of them, and we call it a game. But I told Lady Shelton we really did not need any shell flowers. So Lady Shelton said she knew we Americans loved dogs, so she would love us to meet her mother. So then she took Dorothy and Major Falcon and I to her mother's house, which was just around the corner from her house, because her mother seems to be called a countess and raised dogs. So her mother was having a party too, and she seemed to have quite red hair and quite a lot of paint for such an elderly lady. So the first thing she asked us if we bought some shell flowers from her daughter. So we told her no. But she did not seem to act like a countess of her elderly age should act, because she said, "You were right, my dears. Don't let my daughters stick you. They fall apart in less than a week." So then she asked us if we would like to buy a dog. I mean, I could not stop Dorothy, but she said, "How long before the dogs fall apart?" But I do not think the countess acted like a countess ought to act, because she laughed very, very loud, and she said that Dorothy was really priceless, and she grabbed Dorothy and kissed her and held her arm around her all the time. I mean, I really think that a countess should not encourage Dorothy, or else she is just as unrefined as Dorothy seems to be. But I told the countess that we did not need any dog. So then I met a quite delightful English lady who had a very, very beautiful diamond tiara in her handbag, because she said that she thought some Americans would be at the party, and it was really a very, very great bargain. I mean, I think a diamond tiara is delightful, because it is a place where I really never thought of wearing diamonds before, and I thought I had almost one of everything until I saw a diamond tiara. The English lady, who is called Mrs. Weeks, said it was in her family for years, but the good thing about diamonds is they always look new. So I was really very intrigued, and I asked her how much it cost in money, and it seems it was $7,500. So then I looked around the room, and I noticed a gentleman who seemed to be quite well groomed. So I asked Major Falcon who he was, and he said he was called Sir Francis Beekman, and it seems he is very, very wealthy. So then I asked Major Falcon to give us an introduction to one another, and we met one another, and I asked Sir Francis Beekman if he would hold my hat while I could try on the diamond tiara, because I could wear it backwards with a ribbon, on account of my hair being hobbed. And I told Sir Francis Beekman that I really thought it looked quite cute. So he thought it did too, but he seemed to have another engagement. So the Countess came up to me, and she is really very unrefined, because she said to me, "Do not waste your time on him." Because she said that whenever Sir Francis Beekman spent a halfpenny, the statue of a gentleman called Mr. Nelson took off his hat and bowed. I mean, some people are so unrefined. They seem to have unrefined thoughts